Today on Sports Central, being every college football game preview and prediction on the 2020 New Mexico Bowl between Hawaii and Houston, two teams of which have had good seasons, and both teams are really evenly matched coming into this matchup, so it should make for a good game here between Hawaii and Houston. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this game here today, starting out with your team trends. Hawaii beat UNLV in their last game, 38-21. Pretty good way to finish out the regular season there for Hawaii, and all around this team has been one of the better teams in the Mountain West this season, as they finished just right alongside San Diego State for that fourth position in the Mountain West this season. So all around, it's been a good season for Hawaii, that's for sure. Meanwhile, for Houston, they finished out as a middle-of-the-pack team in the American Athletic this season, as they finished out 3-4, and Hawaii finished out 4-4. So really, both teams here are really evenly matched based off of record, and especially, if you look at the stats here, they're very similar between both of these teams. So we're going to be going over that in just a couple of minutes here. But as for Houston, they lost to Memphis in their last game. 27-30 was the final score there. But it was still a close game, and considering Memphis is a team that's in a pretty good bowl game this season, that's not a terrible loss there for Houston at all. Winning streaks for both these teams, once again, Hawaii is 4-4 with a one-game winning streak, and then for Houston, they're 3-4 with a one-game losing streak. This game is to be on Thursday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time in Frisco, Texas. Spread currently says Houston by 13. ESPN FPI is also going with Houston here, 82%. And the Vegas prediction is going with Houston here, 38-24. So Houston is actually really heavily favored in this game, which is a little bit of a surprise there. I understand Hawaii is pretty injured, but Houston here, they've got a 13-point spread. They're favored by 82%. And this is a team that's got a losing record in a bowl game. That's kind of a rare sight to see there. Once again, Houston is favored. Not much of a surprise, too, considering this game was moved from New Mexico, from Albuquerque, where it usually is, to Frisco. So that could be a part of the reason why the spread is kind of favoring Houston there, is because Houston's pretty much only a number of miles away. Meanwhile, Hawaii has to travel pretty much across the entire world. But for Houston here, still they're a pretty heavy favorite here. Spread currently says Houston by 13 coming into this matchup. Use your stack pressure for this game, and this is why I think these two teams are so evenly matched. If you look at these stats here, we've got several stats that are very similar. Hawaii's scored 26 points per game, and they've also allowed 29 points per game. They had 243 pass yards a game, 155 rush yards. And then for yards allowed, they got 190 passing, and then 230 rushing. So really for Hawaii, they're kind of in a rare situation where they actually allow more rush yards per game than pass yards per game, which is, once again, it's usually the opposite. Usually the pass defense allows more yards than the rush defense. But for Hawaii here, this is a team that allows a lot of rushing yards. And for Houston here, if they've got it, which they're decent in the rushing game, but this is going to be a game where Houston really needs to run the ball a lot if they're going to get the win. As for Houston, they got 32 points per game, 32 points allowed, so they're pretty evenly matched there. They got 268 pass yards a game, 155 rush yards, and then for yards allowed, they got 244 passing and 172 rushing. So really, that's the only difference between both of these stat lines here, is the yards allowed for both teams. But both teams are certainly pretty good offensively. Especially in the passing game. If you look at both quarterbacks, both quarterbacks have put up around 2,000 yards on this season. And even though both quarterbacks have interception issues, we've seen some pretty good games out of both teams. Here's some key points for this one. Both teams are equally matched here, in my opinion. There's no doubt that both teams could easily win this game. But Houston, you do got to consider. Houston's in the American Athletic, which is, I would say, a better conference than the Mountain West, even though I probably say the Mountain West is the next one out from being one of the better quarterbacks, or one of the better conferences in the nation. But if you look at Houston here, they've played a tougher schedule than Hawaii. So they're going to have more experience there. There's no doubt about that. Houston's played Cincinnati, and they've played UCF, they've played Memphis. All those teams that have been really good this season, Houston has played against. And even though they lost to all three of those teams, they still have kept it close against, they kept it close against Memphis, and they also kept it close against, or somewhat close against, UCF. So really for Houston here, this is a team that's gained experience over the season. And I genuinely do think that Houston, even though they've played a tough schedule, especially in the later parts of the season, this is still a team that I think has improved as the season has gone on. But for Hawaii here, if you look at them, they've lost 3 of their last 5. This is a team that doesn't have much momentum right now. They did beat UNLV in their last game of the regular season, but if you look at some of their other games, they got blown out to San Diego State. But nonetheless, both teams have got some blowout losses. There's no excuse there. But if you look at Houston, they haven't played well in big games as well. That's something you also got to consider here. is this is going to be one of the bigger games of the season for both these teams. And considering Hawaii's played better in big games than Houston has, you do got to consider that in this game as well. And honestly, considering both these offenses here, I mean, this does set up for a higher scoring game. I think both teams could get into a shootout here, which I don't think that's going to happen in the end. I do think we see more of a moderate scoring game, which is what I'm going with here, with your final score being 31-27. But I definitely think this game could it certainly could hit the over there's definitely a big chance that we do see the over be hit in this game, mainly because of both offenses here. And both offenses, especially over the past few games, have scored a decent amount of points, so you got to consider that as well. But I'm going to go with Houston here. I think Hawaii is definitely capable of winning this game. And if you're into betting, I certainly would not bet on this game right now because, I mean, Hawaii I definitely think is capable of winning this game. There's no doubt that Hawaii, I think, is just as talented as Houston. They've played some great games as well this season, and I'm really not very comfortable with picking this game. I mean, Houston, I think, is going to win, but I just think, I mean, both teams certainly could win this one. If you told me Hawaii was going to win this game, I really would not be very surprised. I mean, Hawaii's 4-4. They've played a good schedule as well, and they've certainly had some good wins down the stretch too. But once again, I'm going to go with Houston here, 31-27 being the final score. I just think Houston, I mean, they've played a little bit better down the stretch, and even though they don't play as well in big games, I think they kind of prevail in this one, and they're going to get the win over Hawaii. But Hawaii's going to lead it at halftime. 17-14 will be the final score at the half, will be the score at the half. I think Hawaii will lead it then. But in the final, Houston's going to win. They're going to have a big second half and win this one 31-27. Probability will be 60% towards the Cougars. But once again, I'm not very confident in picking this game. I certainly think that Hawaii's got a good chance to win this one. But let me know your thoughts and comments below on this game. Let me know your score predictions, all of that down below. I appreciate you guys all watching this video. And once again, stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll catch you on the next one.